can lean down here, and there's a chair there.
You want a chair or want to stay in the
No,
This is so nice of Kate here to do this. And of course, if it weren't for all of you, we would have never lasted for 51 years. It's been a great run. And of course, you've been looking at 30 years of Stanford photography, which was a lot of fun in the business. And that's how my business actually got started in 1965. That Kate and Gear and I all have one thing in common. We have several things in common, but one thing is that we're all graduates of the photo program at Ohio University. I was there a little before them, and they stayed a little longer than I did for more degrees, but I escaped after 4 years with a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Photography. And then I went from there, and I was in the Air Force for 3 years. Back in those days, I graduated from OU in '62, and back then any male individual who could stand and talk would likely wind up in the military. And so I took the easy way out. We had 2 years, the first 2 years, freshman and sophomore year of Air Force ROTC were required. And I stayed on for my junior and senior year, and then went into the Air Force as a second lieutenant in charge of a low-level photo reconnaissance squadron. And that was really great experience. Here I was, fresh out of school, 21 years old, and in charge of 25 people who were career people. Who was I to tell them what to do? Well, I didn't. We had received good advice in our OTC class. You know, let your sergeants do the work. But anyway, our big war was the Cuban Missile Crisis. And when I say we, I didn't take the pictures, but all the pictures over Cuba were taken by jet fighters that had cameras where the fighter planes would have had guns. And they went over Cuba at 500 feet, took pictures, we processed the pictures, and the photo interpreters then looked and found the missiles. And it was all very exciting. And when we were all finished, President Kennedy came to speak to us. And I loved his words. He says, "And gentlemen," because there were no ladies in the military then, "I must say, you gentlemen take very good pictures." And that was really exciting to see Air Force One and have him come out. But it was a great 51 years that I had the camera store. We started off in '65 when I got out of the Air Force with my former partner Dick Keeble, who used to have a camera store in Palo Alto. And his father had a camera store before him in the early 1920s in downtown Palo Alto. But it wasn't a pure camera store. His father was an interior decorator. And so it was a furniture store, a camera store. One of his brothers did picture framing. One of his brothers ran a photo lab. So it was a real family operation. And then Dick moved the camera store to Town and Country Village when it opened in 1953. And in 1954, when I was in 9th grade, I started working for him after school. And I worked there through high school and through vacations through college. And when I was in the Air Force, Dick had sold his interest in his store and was doing photography out of his house, doing wedding photography, and that's where the Stanford photography came from. He had been doing that for a number of years. So our first year, in 1965, we just did photography. We did huge numbers of weddings, we did lots of sports photography. Electronics industry was getting started in Palo Alto, and I would go off with my little attaché case with my sample prints and go off selling my wares to companies like Hewlett Packard and other companies that were just kind of starting to go along. And so we built up a really good photography business, but what I really wanted was a camera store. However, there was one thing stopping us: neither of us had any money. So when we got out of the Air Force, I was living at home, so as long as I showed up for dinner, there was food on the table. And my parents were very good, no charge to live there, so I could live very cheaply. And Dick's kids were long out of the house, and his wife was working, so he didn't need a whole lot of money either. So it was a great time to be in business. I tell people it was so easy to go into business. There were no computers, no fax machines, no business permits. It was just easy. It was just kind of rent a little space. And our first space we rented on Birch Street was $300 a month. Today, that same space rents for close to $4,000 a month. It's not a good time to be in the retail business. But so you could go into business, regardless of whether it's a camera business or anything else, and it wasn't expensive. It was something that anyone that was willing to work hard could probably succeed. And we did. We worked really hard. And anyway, after the first year, we had saved a little money, and we put in a very small line of cameras. And the first line of cameras was made by Graflex, the same company that made this one right over here. That wasn't the one we were selling, but so we started off with that, and we sold a few of those. And then the next line of cameras we put in was Pentax. And Pentax was huge. It was so much bigger than Nikon or Canon. Pentax was really, this is kind of the evolution of the camera business, how it's changed with product lines going out of business, coming into business. And we slowly built up about the first 5 years, still photography was our main source of income. And cameras were kind of secondary. And then as the years went on, and I got into the camera business at really a good time, because prior to about the middle to the late 60s, it was really tough to take a picture. You had to have a handheld light meter. You had to understand shutter speeds and f-stops. You had to be able to focus the camera. And good cameras were limited numbers, and they were pretty expensive. So not a lot of people really were involved in really high quality photography, other than professional photographers. But as the later 60s came along, electronics started to get into photography, and cameras had built-in light meters. Well, this was a pretty good deal. So now it was pretty easy to set the exposure. And then as time went on, autofocus came along. Well, autofocus was a great boon to us. We would have wives drag their husbands in with bags of really high-quality camera equipment, but it was manual focus. And they'd say, "I'm getting tired of you taking a picture. You turn the lens one way, the focus, you turn it the other way, you turn it back, you take so much time, and your picture is still out of focus. Buy this autofocus camera." And what was wonderful about that was that we not only sold a new camera, but we took their cameras in on trade. And I have a classic example here, Fred sitting over here. Speak up, Fred. Fred was the second one to be in command of our used department. Paul Wood, who was the first one, gave up after 35 years and retired and moved up to Oregon. But our youth department has been phenomenal because they're great bargains for people. So anyway, people were trading cameras in, buying new cameras. Anyway, the camera business boomed, and eventually, I think we did Stanford for 30 years. That's up to about 95. So probably towards the end of the 90s was when we stopped doing any kind of photography. Wedding photography, I stopped doing 8 years ago. Wedding photography was a great business for many, many years. But automatic cameras really put a damper on wedding photography, because for the first probably 10 years that we were doing weddings, the only way you could get a really good picture is to have a professional photographer take it. But then as cameras got more automated, people got better and better at using automated cameras, they were getting really good pictures. So the wedding photography, we still sold a lot of, a book of the posed pictures, but where a lot of the money came from was from candid pictures. And the candid pictures part of wedding photography really kind of died out because people were doing better. So we stopped doing weddings, and then eventually we stopped doing the Stanford stuff. because I just thoroughly enjoyed the camera business and enjoyed all the people that were coming in. And we used to see customers so many times. Back before digital was great. When digital first came out, I probably shouldn't be so honest here, but we made a lot of money off of all of you with early digital cameras. And as we look back, we talk about it and we feel guilty. Because we were selling 1 megapixel cameras for $1,500. And the picture quality stunk compared to a fairly decent film camera. Yet, it's what people wanted. This was the advantage of being in the area that we're in, where people are so quick to grasp on to new electronics, new technology. And I forgot where I was, where this was all going. Anyway, with that early digital, so okay, with film. So we would see people would come in and they'd buy a roll of film, and we'd talk to them. Then they go out and take the pictures, bring the roll of film back for processing. We'd talk to them again. Then they'd come back, pick up their pictures. We'd talk to them again. So we had this real close relationship with customers. And that went on for so many years. But with digital photography, we really lost that relationship with I mean, I know a lot of you still have been very loyal customers. I really appreciate that. But with digital photography, we would sell a camera, we'd sell a memory card. Most people didn't print pictures, and we wouldn't see the people again. So the business changed that way. And I like the personal attachment that we used to have to this huge customer base. I had at one point, we had 70 people working in the store at one time. That was in our absolute heyday. And I'll be honest with you, sales started to dip. And the camera industry was very, very good. They should be arrested for price fixing because Canon, Nikon, Olympus, they all dictate what we sell things for. But the real difference was as internet came along, you didn't have to pay sales tax if you ordered from anybody out of California. And so a lot of people, and I really can't blame the people, because a $2,000 camera purchase, that's close to $200 sales tax. And so more and more people were coming to see us, taking advantage of our knowledge, and then buying elsewhere. Like I said, I don't blame the people, because I blame the government for allowing this to happen. And this is why retail is slowly disappearing. And I had two very interesting visitors about 2 weeks ago. A new CEO from B&H Camera, who wanted to come see me. And I didn't know why, and it was great. So he came in, and we talked at length for a couple hours. And the question he had, one of the questions he asked, he said, well, why was, I said, you better watch out, because your sales are going to go way down now that we're out of business. We're not sending you customers. He wasn't too concerned, though. But he asked, he asked me the question, he said, well, what's the difference between internet selling and mail order, where a lot of the same companies used to advertise on the back, not actually on the back as well as inside photo magazines. And I said, well, the real difference was that mail order was slimy. There were a lot of people that got burned buying mail order. Yet with internet, it's so easy to check. There's so many sites you can go on to check the reliability of a firm. And he agreed. He said, yeah, that's been the big difference for us, that we run a very clean operation, and they do. And wherever you go on the internet, he said, we're going to have really top ratings. And so that's what's made it difficult for retail. And I agonized. I mean, if you'd asked me a year ago, in fact, people used to ask me, as I get older, but you'd never know it. They say, when are you going to retire? I said, never. I have no reason to retire. I have these wonderful people that work with me. I like to travel. I like to take pictures. And I said, I leave the store here. They said, well, don't you worry about the store when you're gone? I said, absolutely not. I said, I have total confidence in the people that are running it. I said, I go off for a week or 2 or 3, I come back, I have loads of pictures to be printed, it's wonderful, and I hang around a while again, then we go off again. And so I had absolutely zero plans as of, well, probably about a year and a half ago. And then, I'll be very honest with you, we were losing money for several years. But we had made some really good money for a whole bunch of years. And I wanted to keep it going. I kept thinking, maybe it's going to come back. Maybe people will come back to retail again. And we did that for 3 or 4 or 5 years. And it just became real evident that the retail business is probably doomed. Not right away, but over the next, even when you see firms like Macy's that will be closing stores. I mean, the internet has affected retail to a point that it affects the little guy up to the big guy. And it was really agonizing to come up and say, we just have to close this store. And part of my decision was based on, there used to be a stationery store. There was one across the street from my store that closed about a year ago. But in the 80s, there was a stationery store that was run by this really nice couple. And they had a great business going there for a number of years. And they closed. And I ran into the lady over at Office Depot one day, and we were talking, and she says, look at me, she says, I'm working for the people that put me out of business. And she said, we were losing money, but we thought we could save the store. And it came to a point where we mortgaged our house against the store. In turn, we lost our house, we lost the store. She said we should have been smarter and known when to walk away, but we didn't do that. And I always remember her story. And obviously didn't want that happening to me, but I felt really badly for the people that have worked for me for so many years. And for all the customers, the outpouring of best wishes has been just phenomenal and so much appreciated. So we closed the store at the end of October. We're still in business over eBay. Fred has a group of people, we've got about 7 or 8 people, and we have a bunch of stuff left over. And so if you're interested, look on eBay. Here's my commercial picture. Yes, look on eBay, and you may find something you're looking for. We have a lot of truly unique items, and that's where we are today. So we're just
What's the
we're
eBay
still
logo?
It's KSP_photography.
okay, KSP_photography. And we have several hundred items up there right now. So there's a lot of stuff. We make it easy. We can ship it to you, or you can pick it up at the store.
Store's still open.
No, you have to knock 3 times. It's like Fernando's Hideaway. Right, yes. However that went, I don't know. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be certainly glad to keep them simple as far as it's about a camera.
Well, I'll start. So we might notice that it's not just the cameras, but it's also the artwork. Can you tell us a little bit about the Amish work and what drew you to that part of the country and what your experience was in photographing?
Ohio University. The Amish are, their strong points are in Indiana, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. And back when I was filming for Stanford, we traveled back to South Bend, Indiana, to play Notre Dame. And we always went a couple of days early, and I'd get a car and go driving around taking pictures. So my first experience with the Amish was in the South Bend area of Shipshewana. And there's just a huge area there. They do not like having their pictures taken. so you have to respect their wishes and sneak up on them. Oh yes, I understand. In fact, it has something to do with their face, and I don't know if you've ever seen an Amish doll, but an Amish doll looks like a regular doll, but it does not have facial characteristics. No eyes, nose, or mouth. So this part of the doll is totally blank. And they're wonderful people. They're very, very nice people. They keep pristine areas. Their homes are absolutely unbelievable.
Peppermint?
Government?
Peppermint?
Peppermint?
Is that one of their products?
I don't know.
I think so.
Furniture is big. They're big furniture
Peppermint's
makers.
big, too. Yeah, Wrigley's buys it all.
But they're, and then when I was going to school in Ohio, well, actually, I didn't ever go to the Amish area then. Somehow I wound up, so I go back to Ohio University every few years to reminisce and talk to the squirrels on campus. You know, look around, look where buildings used to be, the old photo lab buildings long knocked down. They built a new photo lab which opened after I graduated in '63. And today they're talking about raising funds to totally restore that building. It's an old-looking building. And here it was brand new, not even open when I was there. But we started going back to Ohio, but when I was going back to OU, usually I'd go back to a football game or a fraternity reunion. And then I'd spend a week up in the Amish area. And the Amish have flea markets and hay sales in different small towns during the week. And these hay auctions are really exciting. These farmers come in with these huge loads of hay. They'll have a giant truck, a giant trailer load. And I learned so much about hay there. I knew nothing about hay. I knew that horses ate it and cows. But there's a first cutting and a second cutting and a third cutting. I thought it grew once. And so all these trucks line up. It's a huge operation. And the auctioneer, who is an Amish fellow, and they're mostly Amish there, it's the English, us, that are selling the hay. And the Amish are the ones who are buying. And they go along, and it's a real auction, real fast and sold. And then the English farmers who have sold the hay will then take the Amish fellow. Amish do not drive, but they will ride in cars, trucks, buses. They ride buggies with horses. And so then after they buy a load of hay, the fellow agrees. Part of the hay auction and the rules are that, I forget if it's 15 or 20 miles within where the auction was held, you have to take and deliver your hay. So one of the Amish would go with the fellow who had sold it. If it's beyond that, then you go to Uber and they'll take it the rest of the way. And then they also have, at these auctions, the ladies will bring maybe like bottles of pickles or cookies, cakes, eggs. I've never seen so many flats of eggs. And then animals, they sell rabbits, chickens, everything you can imagine. They're really exciting, these auctions. They have cattle auctions there. So there's some pictures of, there's one there of a cattle auction. And they're great places for pictures, but you have to kind of be careful. The older Amish are the ones that really don't want their pictures taken, and if they see you, they'll do this. So then you pretend that you're not taking the picture. This was the advantage. I've been using an Olympus OMD camera lately, and it has, where the screen comes out. So I found if you keep the camera down here, you kind of stare down, and you get great pictures that way, and they're not even aware. I was there, probably the first time I was there, I had a Nikon, it's either a D2 or a D3, which is a big camera. And that was intimidating to them. And I had a few people And I intimidate. If someone comes to me and says, I'm gonna, kick you in the rear end if you take a picture, I won't take a picture. So, but with the smaller camera, it was so much easier.
Questions? Anyone have any questions?
What's your favorite camera?
Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry.
Go first.
Well, I have a variety of cameras for a variety of reasons. For years, I mean, if we go way back, the Matthew Gray days, when I used to coat my own plates and had a covered wagon. And I didn't do that. For years, for weddings, we used to do everything on 4x5. And then from there, we went to Rolleiflex cameras. And then I'm a prostitute with cameras. I will use whatever I can get for nothing. And for a while, I had both Nikon and Canon cameras. And Canon wanted their camera back. I said, can I have a new one? Well, not now. So I used, if we go back to film, I was using Hasselblad for years. But when it came to digital cameras, it was a combination of Nikon and Canon. And the Nikon was really generous to me, and I had loads of stuff from them. And so I used that for a number of years. Then I got really fascinated with the mirrorless cameras. Because I like to travel. I don't like carrying really heavy stuff. And as I mentioned, with the problem I had with the big Nikon stuff with the Amish, that for people pictures, the smaller cameras are just so much better. And the quality to me is excellent. And so I've been using mainly the Olympus OMD system for about the last 3 years. And they have a new model, which I have on order and actually would have to pay for, which really hurts. As I look back on this, was a dumb idea closing the store. I was only looking at the monetary, so I didn't look at the perks.
Are you getting it online?
No, they're still going to take care of me. But you have what kind? But for flash, Nikon has the absolute best flash system of any camera. And so I have some loaner Nikon stuff that I use particularly when I'm doing flash photography or really low light level stuff. I have a D500, which you can take pictures at 40,000 ISO, 50,000, whatever it is, and you'd never know that it wasn't 200. So they've really got it good there. So there's different cameras really for different purposes.
I've always been wowed by the enormous camera collection. And I was wondering when you started it and how long it took you to acquire it.
I started it probably I've got the first one maybe when I was in high school. And there used to be over in Oakland, Salvation Army had an antique store. I don't remember what part of Oakland it was in, but you could buy old cameras, this sort of thing. You could buy those for maybe $2. This was in 1923. No. This was in late 50s into early 60s. And I would buy, I'd go over there and maybe go with $2 and come home with 3 or 4 cameras. It was kind of neat. And then I had the cameras at home, and I had them on display in our living room. And one day I brought home one too many cameras. And my wife, the mother of my daughter Julie, and my daughter Christy, my wife Marcia said to me, I think those cameras need to go down to your store. And so I took them down there. This was when we were in the old building on Birch Street. And what I really liked about them was that they were interesting, and our customers are interested in them. And so I kept buying, I would buy a few more, and then all of a sudden people started giving them to me. And they say, oh, I've got an old camera, I'm going to throw it away, would you like it? Yes, I would. So many of the cameras that I had at the store had been given to us, and that's why I had no interest in selling them. I wanted to give them. I would have felt real guilty if I had sold them. So like I said, we had them there for people to look at and enjoy, and that's why I was so glad when Kate and Gear came along and said, we could really use those cameras. What are you going to do with them? I said, I'm looking for a home for them. So really, and I'm just delighted. In fact, there's one downstairs that Gear was telling me about, and I looked at it, I said, well, I sort of recognize that, but they've restored one of the cameras, a great big bellows camera. I mean, it is immaculate. And it's exactly what I never did with any of them. I just put them, up in the condition that they were in, and they just sat there for years. Plus, I had just so many boxes of cameras. You can't imagine how many hundreds of cameras that we had. And so as I said, I'm just really delighted. This is very exciting, seeing how they're on display here. And I really thank Kate and Gear for asking me and then keeping them alive.
I got one. Can you tell us about your Leica collection?
My former Leica collection, yes.
Yeah.
I didn't feel guilty about selling that.
I felt that you didn't give me a chance.
I got into the Lycans, well, collecting. There again, wasn't Salvation Army, but when I was traveling with Stanford, we would, land in some town, and I'd usually get a car, and this was back in the days. This was in the later 60s, 70s, 80s, into the early 90s. But back when there were lots of little camera stores. We'd go driving around the little towns, find camera stores, and find old Lycans. And you could pick them up for $50, $75. And so I bought a lot of them that way. And there again, I had them. We were very, very big Leica dealers for Leica. We sold a lot of Leica equipment. And in fact, one of the cameras that was on display was one that I bought when I was working for Dick Keeble when I was in high school. And it was engraved with my name. Back in those days, they had really good employee purchase plans, but they wanted to make sure that you didn't sell the camera. So you had to agree to keep it for, I don't know, whatever it was, 100 years or something. And plus they engraved your name on it. So when it came time to closing, I did sell that collection. I did keep that one camera though, that has my name on it.
Which one is it?
It's the Leica 3G with a 50mm f2 Summicron lens. And I bought that in about '57 for $150. I mean, it just shows you how, it was like I was saying about my old store, the first, it was $300 a month, and now it's around $3,500 to $4,000 for that same space. Inflation.
It's the one down on the corner.
On Burn, it's where Anatolian Cafe is.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments? Gary, you want to? Well, we want to give you time to visit, to wander, and to eat some of the food. There's
Yes.
more food. I just thank everyone for being in. Thank you.
Oh, thank
Shelley,
you so
for
much.
sharing your
Thank you.
stories
No,
and for sharing
as
your
I said,
support.
I really appreciate seeing the cameras. I want to see more of them restored.
We're working on it. In fact, on that note, I'm thinking of offering a camera restoration workshop. When you go downstairs, 2 volunteers and I worked on a camera for well over 6 hours. It's the one with the red bellows. They didn't start out red. So
And they shouldn't be read today.
it's a lot of fun, taking things apart and seeing how they operate and then restoring them.
Yeah.
And profusely, Terry, thank you for all the years of support. Thank you for your continued support. and keep making great pictures.
Oh, I will, I will.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
So let's mingle, let's eat, have some fun.